it's like getting a gift from a stranger that you never expected, and that's always fantastic. But I think for your self-esteem as a writer, if you're sitting there waiting for prizes or for good reviews or for sales to validate you, you could be in for quite a miserable time. I think generally you know once you've finished it whether you've done a good job, whether you've put in as much effort as you need to, and whether it's turned out what you intended. And so it was this case with Chinaman. I didn't know it was going to get published outside of Sri Lanka, but when I finished it, it was, I mean, there were flaws in it, but I felt that it was what I wanted, my ambitions when I started, because it was quite an ambitious project, and that it got there. When I graduated, I could either be a journalist or a copywriter, and copywriting seemed like less work, so I just kind of took that so it'd give me more time to play bass. And in the meantime, yeah, I think everyone has ideas for screenplays, novels, stories, so I kept a journal and I jotted things down, but no, I didn't have a burning ambition to write a novel before the age of whatever. I mean, I thought I might write something later, but it's like, yeah, my musical career never went anywhere, and advertising, yeah, you kind of lose your stomach for it after doing it for a long time, and I started a lot of novels which I didn't finish. And I came to the conclusion that it takes you as long to write a bad novel as it does to write a decent one. And I spent I spent a year writing a novel which is terrible, and I stopped writing for a while, and I told myself, if you ever decide to do a project like this, make sure you do it properly. So when the idea for Chinaman came, I decided, okay, to learn from those mistakes and, you know, dedicate yourself to writing every day and doing it. There's no precedent. I mean, if you are a Sri Lankan writer, especially writing in English, you're not going to be published outside of Colombo, Galle or Kandy, and maybe the rest of Sri Lanka. But getting into India is like our ultimate goal, because we don't really have a publishing industry there. I mean, there's a few publishing houses, but they're very much local, or authors self-publish. So when I was writing it, I wasn't really thinking of writing for India or writing for the UK or anything, because those are just pipe dreams. You're thinking of the readership around you, and so I think that helped, because I didn't feel that I had the need to write it for international audience. So the tone of voice, the colloquialisms, it was very much a very Sri Lankan flavored novel, and especially the character, the way he spoke. I mean, some people asked me if I should correct my grammar and the syntax, but I kept those mistakes in because I think it added to it. Really, it was how a drunk in a bar talking about cricket would express it. So, I mean, maybe that's a key, that if you are writing a very local story, that you should keep it very local, and then therefore you might attract a universal readership. I don't know, but yeah, you can't dream too widely when you're writing a book. I think you just need to focus on what's happening on the page. The cricket thing, I tried writing novels before, and usually what happens is when you're writing about Sri Lanka, there are certain familiar themes. You either talk about the war or sort of an ethnic love affair, Sinhalese girl, Tamil boy sort of thing, or talk about the tsunami, or talk about corruption or colonials. And all these subjects, I just didn't feel that I was qualified to give a new spin on it. And also I knew that if I didn't really do my homework, you know, there would be people to criticize it. But so when I came across this story, cricket seemed like a harmless thing. It seemed like I could talk about Sri Lanka without addressing these things head on. And really, I was just looking at it as a detective story about a drunk and his sidekick tracking down this kind of shadowy figure. But then, as I drafted it, all these other things seeped in. So cricket became like a means of talking about Sri Lanka's history and colonialism and corruption and the conflict within the country. But that wasn't the intention. It was just supposed to be just a fun story about cricket. I tried, when I revised it, to make sure that anyone, like a reader who's not into cricket and doesn't know anything about Sri Lanka, could still read the story. So that's why in the beginning of it, you get little cheat notes on kind of cricket for dummies quotes. So hopefully by 50 pages, even if you've never seen the game, you can still relate to it. Because, I mean, I read baseball novels and I watch baseball movies, and I have no interest in the game, but I think if the story is compelling, you can. So that's my sales pitch anyway. So One thing I did was I really did my homework. So I researched Sri Lankan cricket from 1982 to 1999, which is the period. Because one thing I knew, that even though I wasn't a huge cricket fanatic, there are a lot of cricket obsessives in Sri Lanka. So if I didn't do my homework, there'll be armies of guys waiting to rip it apart. So I did do the research, but when I kind of plotted the career path of Pradeep Matthew, I did use a lot of actual events. So pretty much all the cricket matches you see in the book are based on true events. The catalyst was when in '98, one of these guys, Anura Ranasinghe, a guy who played like 2 games, and it was between him and our captain, Arjuna Ranatunga, for the final place. And obviously the captain got it and he went on to a career. This guy didn't get a place in the team and went to South Africa, got banned for life, ended up drinking himself to death. And so that was the catalyst, and I just tried to see if there were more cricketers like that, and it turned out there were plenty. And so Pradeep Matthew is sort of an amalgamation of that, but I think the archetype is bigger than Sri Lanka or cricket. No, I don't think I'd call myself a political writer. The only thing I could call myself is, yeah, a writer of cricket stories and a writer of drunken stories, but both cricket and alcohol contain a lot of politics, which I later found out. And also in Sri Lanka, there's plenty of political writers, plenty of opinions on politics, and we have these chat shows that go on late into the night. And so with that, and also now online, you've got lots of blogs talking about what's happening in the current scenario and so on. And so I wanted to avoid all of that, so that's why I chose cricket. But the politics sort of seeped in, I think, and I still get asked in interviews, because I mean, obviously Sri Lanka is in the news and has been, especially over the last couple of years. So I do get asked about it, but I try and sidestep it, because I would much rather tell a harmless story about cricket and drunks. But yeah, the best was the simplest. I think I touched on before the fact that you got to write every day. That's something that most of us, and I think even half an hour a day is more valuable than doing a marathon session on a weekend. But the most interesting writing book was by Stephen King on writing. His advice was simply read a lot and write a lot. If you read for 4 hours a day and write for 4 hours a day, within a year or 2 years, you'll have something decent. And yeah, it sounds like deceptively simple advice, but I think it's true.